NBA players are set to resume playing as early as this Friday following the boycott of yesterday's playoff games. Today's games have been also postponed. It comes as players call for an end to racial injustice after yet another police shooting of a black man in the United States. Jacob Blake was shot in the back by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin. To date, 6 games have been postponed. It started with the Milwaukee Bucks, who refused to take the court yesterday. In a statement, the NBA says it's hopeful to restart the season as early as tomorrow. The protest is unprecedented, and it is having a ripple effect throughout pro sports. Lots more to discuss here, so I want to bring in a couple of guests. In New Jersey, Renee Washington is a former All-American NCAA athlete. She is now a sports host for ESPN and Fox Sports. And in Montreal, Meeker Guerrier. Meeker is a sports host for Rouge FM and a commentator for the LDS Network. And thank you. Nice to see both of you. So, Meeker, I want to ask you about the league that did play, the NHL. What do you think of that? And I know that there's a call going on about what could happen tonight. We're not sure exactly what could, but Meeker, what do you make of that?
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised, and basically I would say a lot of people are not surprised and disappointed about what happened in the NHL, but it's not surprising because seeing the demographics of the NHL, but also of the NHL customers and the fans of the NHL, they're not really directly concerned about what's going on in the United States with the social unrest. But I want to underline something that's very important also, and to underline what positive effect some comments can have. I want to talk about Kelly Hrudey, who yesterday in the broadcast of the game, the first game, talked about the social unrest and said, I don't really want to be here. I want to have this conversation with my family. I want to raise awareness about what's going on in the United States and in the world, frankly. So it's not surprising, but very disappointing by the NHL.
Renee, what do you think?
I do think it's a shame to see that the NHL, they had a moment of reflection before the first game of the night, but did not do anything else throughout the rest of the evening. And as you mentioned, other sports have taken a stand. This is bigger than sports. And for the NBA, WNBA, Major League Baseball, MLS, and even the NFL had practices canceled. It just shows that some leagues are doing what they can to help show that they're going to make a stand. And as players have been coming forth saying they can't focus on playing right now, how do you sit and focus on a game when there's someone that is fighting for his life over what? Potentially reaching for a knife. At the end of the day, in this world, especially in our nation, there is a need for change, and it's not happening fast enough. And it's insane that in 2020 we can find ways to have cars park themselves and fly drones, but we can't figure out how to treat each other like humans. And that's what's making this so much bigger than sports, money, anything else, because it comes down to life or death for Black Americans specifically, and the need for equality, change, peace, and just seeing each other as human at the basic core.
And Meeker, these actions happened 4 years to the day that Colin Kaepernick first took a knee. And remember, there was so much support, but there was also so much criticism of that. It seems like a million years ago. What do you make of that?
Well, it's simply the proof that nothing has changed in the United States. And we talk a lot about the United States, but even here in Canada, we have the same social unrest as well, because there are people that are being marginalized and being treated unfairly by the police. The problem with everything that's going on right now is that athletes had to take a stand, a firm stand, and we're talking about boycotting, but we're basically talking about strike here. The players decided not to go to work for various reasons, mostly, as Renee said, because they just can't play. They're not, their mind is not into playing, but also because things haven't changed in 4 years, and even in the past, I would say 50 years. And that's the problem right now, is that the politicians aren't necessarily taking the steps and doing what's right. So the athletes have to take in their own hands to do what is right, basically. And it's not very complicated, because we talk a lot about Black Lives Matter, and some people talk about it as a debate. It's not a debate. It should be a simple fact that, yes, Black lives do matter. That's it, and that's all. And it should be social inequality for everyone.
Renee, what do you make of the fact that it was 4 years to the day that Colin Kaepernick took a knee, that these games were not played, that the players did not play?
It's a shame. I mean, as we're talking about the fact that 4 years ago, the same issues that Colin Kaepernick took a knee for, we're still protesting and fighting for today. It just shows how little has changed since then. And also the direct fact that he was heavily criticized for taking a knee, and we've seen 4 years later the amount of lives that have been lost at the hands of social injustice. So when you look at these leagues, and I think even taking a step back, the fact that these leagues are predominantly black players, the NBA, the NFL, the WNBA, there are a lot of marginalized groups, black people, homosexual groups that they're representing, different discriminatory groups that are dealing with a lot of issues of not feeling like they're treated equally. So to ask them to continue to play in the wake of all these things going on outside of the bubble and outside of their sport is not practical. It's not reasonable. And I commend them, honestly, for taking a stand, putting aside, as we mentioned, their jobs in that sense, to stand up for what's right, because as mentioned, the same shirts that were worn "I Can't Breathe" years ago, they still work today. They're still relevant today. That's sad. The same things that Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee for and standing up for in that sense, we're still dealing with that today. And to see the players having to continue to voice their opinions and speak up and make a stand on their end, it's time for it to be on a bigger scale and outside of just sports, but across our world, beyond just America, across our world, to really see each other as one.
Renee, what do you make, and Mika, I'll get you to weigh in on this too. I mean, the conversation went from, the Toronto Raptors having Black Lives Matter on their jerseys, on their buses, and then within hours, it seemed to, maybe that's not good enough. Maybe we have to just not play. I mean, this is unprecedented.
Yes, this is exactly what Kyrie Irving and all the NBA players that were speaking up prior to the NBA restart were actually fighting for, saying that they cannot come down, aside from any sort of COVID-19 issues that they may have had, but also just thinking about the fact that how can they leave their families in a time when our nation is in the middle of civil unrest, social injustice is still very prevalent, to now go to Florida, play and stay in a bubble and completely act as though these issues are not still going on. And since George Floyd's murder, we're still dealing with it. Nothing has changed. It has not gotten better. We're still seeing the protests. We're still fighting for Black Lives Matter. And until all lives matter, we have to continue to make that fight. And for the athletes specifically, this is exactly what they've been speaking up on. But this is also something that they've been looking at as a platform. Now, when you have everyone excited for the return of sports, you make a statement by saying, you know what, we're not going to play. Even though we're in the playoffs, even though we're fighting for a championship, it's bigger than sports. It's bigger than me to fight for those around me that look like me, to not have to worry and fear about their lives stepping outside of their doors and being pulled over by a police officer, or any encounter with law enforcement for that matter.
Mika?
So again, it's a tough situation, but I commend them.
Mika?
I think it's very telling that the Raptors were one of the first teams to actually put forward a message like Black Lives Matter because they're a Canadian team. And I think that the social situation here in Canada is maybe a little different, meaning that they have that voice and they have that space where they can speak a lot more than some American teams. And maybe that's where the Raptors are maybe leading the way in that sense. We also have to talk about the Bucks, because the Bucks are the first team that decided not to play, as well as the Brewers in Major League Baseball. And both teams are from Wisconsin. And I think that each and every team, but each and every individual also in that league, have to take the lead and feel concerned by what's going on and feel a part of what's going on. And that's exactly what's going on with the NBA. I'm very also curious to see what will happen with the NFL, because the NFL, contrary to the NBA, is an owner-driven business, whereas the NBA, the owners respect and understand that the players run the league and the players are the one profiting the league and bringing the money to the league. In the NFL, it's a little different, where players aren't treated as equals. And I can't wait to see how everything will have an effect on the NFL season starting in September. And lastly, don't forget that sports is entertainment. And I think the message behind what the players are doing is saying that we're good enough to be your entertainment, but we're not good enough to be respected and listened to. So I think that the players really took in their own hands what politicians, again, weren't able, or in certain cases weren't willing to do. And they're putting pressure not only on their league, but also on the politicians to actually make a difference.
And Renee, the last time that you and I talked, it was the day of George Floyd's funeral. That was about 10 10 weeks ago. Since then, there's been the killing. You went through the list. Others have. Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, others. Now this shooting of Jacob Blake that follows. Do you see signs of hope anywhere right now?
I think sports taking a stand is going to be a big move in the right direction. You know, as we had that conversation before, Andrew, we were talking about what it's going to take for action to happen. And when you start affecting on such a large scale and making an impact and having notable people in the sense of athletes in this case speaking up, that's when you really are going to see change happen. I mean, Doc Rivers' interview that he had where he was tearing up and tearfully saying, this is life or death. You know, we love America, but America doesn't love us back. And to see these so many people that are speaking up about their own experiences, about their own feelings, athletes that are coming forward saying the time is now, change needs to happen now. It is definitely going to press the issue because you can't turn a blind eye anymore. And I know there have been people saying, well, stick to sports. We are so beyond that ignorant concept of sticking to sports because there's no sports without us. And by us, I mean people. You expect people to be able to step into these circumstances, into these arenas, fields, stadiums, and play. But at the end of the day, at the core, we're still dealing with something that's far deeper than sports, politics, religion, or anything else. It's coming down to life or death. So I think this is a change in the right direction because it's affecting so many different elements, financial issues, and just having people that are speaking up that you can't turn a blind eye, you can't ignore the issues here, and it's time for the conversation to continue into action. And now moving forward, making action happen so we no longer have to have these conversations. And young boys don't have to watch their father get shot and nearly die like the 3 sons of Jacob Blake did. So it is definitely time to move in the right direction. And to see someone get shot 7 times in the back, things like that are heart-wrenching, and I honestly can't watch it. It's time for it to no longer happen so we can move forward and be better as a nation, and I think it's going to start now. I hope.
That is, it's an important conversation, and it's unfortunate that we're having it, but it's also important that we're having it, and I really appreciate both of you taking the time. Thank you.